have Bret Phillips here, who I'm going to introduce to you in just a second. But as always, I'm joined by Matt Siebert. What's going on today, Matt?
Not a whole lot. Really excited about this episode, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, we're going to be talking about pricing projects, and that seems to be a topic that comes up in our group and every other one of the 500 groups I'm in just about every day. So I know there's people looking for information on how they can price projects, how they can get more for projects. So hopefully we'll be able to answer some of those questions today. So for those of you that don't know Bret, Matt and I actually met Bret at WordCamp in Dallas-Fort Worth just a couple weeks ago. He was a presenter there, and we saw him spoke and then caught him as he was, I think, leaving to head to the airport, catching an Uber. We caught him right before he left. Yeah, so he works in Atlanta, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Awesome. He works for Sideways8 in Atlanta. He's heavily involved in the 48 in 48 campaign, which I shared about earlier this week on our page. He's a musician and produces music, right? But yeah, I'm just reading things off of what I could stalk you on Facebook. So why don't you introduce yourself and do a little bit better job?
No, I mean, that's pretty much it. So there's a strong technical nerd inside of me, and that seems to translate well into both the web space and the music space. So I've been spending a lot of time doing both of those for many years. I do enjoy it. For Sideways8, my role is essentially project scoping and pricing. So that's why this topic is kind of near and dear to my heart. And and then the 48 and 48 program is, I'm only a volunteer there, but I try to be an advocate for it. It's pretty awesome. We do 48 websites in 48 hours for 48 nonprofits. They are city-specific events for the people doing the work, but the nonprofits come from all over the world. So it's pretty cool, and it's a good way for our for-profit business to give back in a way that has a pretty tremendous impact.
Yeah, that's what you actually did your talk on at WordCamp, as you know. But that's what we heard you come talk about, and I posted about it earlier on our page, and I know people were interested on how they could be involved. So what's the best way for them to find out more information and see how they can be involved in that?
Sure. It's 48in48.org. So IN 48in48 is the whole thing. Just go there, apply. You can look around. If you want to contact me directly, I'm happy to talk to you about it. It's a passion project for sure. And it's not a for-profit project, but our for-profit business does do a lot of work with larger nonprofits. So it starts to get real meta and weird, but it's cool.
Well, while we're on the subject of free websites, tell me this burning question I have that I never can find the answer to. How much does a website cost?
It really depends on who you're doing the website for. So I've found that the same amount of work goes into a $500 website as goes into a $5,000 website, as potentially goes into a $50,000 website. You know, all the people need the same thing. It really just depends on where they're coming from, where they're out their current business, and how much they can afford to pay, which then they try to find somebody that matches that appropriately. So for our team to do a $500 website, that wouldn't even get us on the phone. But as an individual, for a long time, I did those, and it took me, months to get those things done. So I was making no money. Not saying you can't do it. It's totally possible to make money on a $500 website, but you should be able to get that done in before lunch.
Right. Yeah. I think all my first few projects were about $500. I think actually me and Matt, when we first connected, he hired me as a subcontractor to do a job. And I ended up splitting the price of the website with him. And I think we both made like $300. So
it was a $750 website.
Yeah, it was great.
Whoops.
So
yeah, I consider it a paid education.
Sure.
Yep.
Somebody paid you to learn that you were not charging enough.
Yeah. And there's value, there's value that comes out of it too, because so much of our business is referral based. So now you got to kind of explain to somebody that, yes, I just did this website for $500, but this next website isn't going to be that much. So, I've kind of had that awkward conversation with people as far as I just charged their buddy this much. Now I got to charge somebody else a lot more. So how would you kind of approach a situation like that if you ran into something like that?
You're talking about specifically, you do, let's say $500. I would like to, by the end of the conversation, we're going to be talking about a lot more money.
Good.
But you just did one for $500. Their buddy comes up and says, "Hey, I got a business. I heard you did a $500 website. You know that you probably need 1,500 to 2,000 to actually make a profit." I'm a big believer in full transparency in all aspects of our business and really life. It just makes things easier. So I would really just tell them, "Hey, during that project, I realized a lot more work goes into it than I thought. Here's the value that I brought to them. You can talk to them directly about it. And if you think that you would like to work with me, it's going to cost X. And you should already have a good idea of what that next thing is going to cost." I think it's tremendously helpful to have an outline of what you can do for a certain price to just have a starting point for that conversation. So, if it's a 5-page website, it has one contact form, they're providing the logo and all the content, that's something you can package up. But if it's going to require a discovery process and some custom functionality and everything, it's hard to even say what that's going to cost before you start diving into it.
So what are the like the main, or do you have like a set like list of like assets or like needs that all kind of have like a general price point to them when you're doing that?
Yeah. So, at this point, our default proposal basically outlines what it would be for, I guess, about a 20-page website. I have a whole page listed on our proposal that says, here's what's included in a standard website. And it's regular stuff like, page content is included. We're going to install certain plugins. We're going to make sure that, there's some level of accessibility testing that's done, some level of GDPR that's done. Just the stuff that we know for sure is going to go into every website that we want to put our hands on. And that just gives me a ballpark to start from. So when somebody's like, "Hey, how much does it cost to get involved and what does that include?" I can either just send that directly or start the conversation and try to feel it out a little bit more. But yeah, I definitely have an outline of what our base website is going to cover. And it fits most projects, but obviously there's always some little something that needs to be changed.
Sure. So you did talk about kind of at the beginning, when I jokingly asked you how much a website costs, you had mentioned part of it depends on how much they're willing to pay or what they're looking to spend. So that leads me into kind of more like a value-based pricing system where you're kind of looking at that company and wanting to be the right fit for them. Obviously you don't want to be too expensive for somebody, then you're not a good fit. But also at the same point, if you're dealing with a large company and you come in with a way too cheap proposal, they're not going to take you seriously. So you can't, it's very difficult to pick a standard pricing and say, this is what I'm going to charge mom and pop, and this is what I'm going to charge big international corporation. So how does that factor into your pricing?
So there's a couple things. One of them is, I have a pretty good idea who our best case customer is. I know roughly how many people are on staff, kind of what their revenue is per year, an idea of what a marketing budget would be in there. So I know that my default price point kind of fits within that. But I know that same exact website, we could probably do our cost much less and still make a profit. So as I start to feel out where their business is at, how much budget they have, I try to frame it out as, all right, well, we can do this for this much. If you want the all-in, it's going to be this much. To touch on all-in real quick, because something you mentioned triggered this. What I never want to do with a customer is have them go all in with their budget to do a project for them, because the expectation that they're going to have set for whatever it is that they're trying to pay you, you're never, ever, ever going to be able to reach that expectation. And there's so much more that can happen. So we're a full-scale digital marketing agency. We don't just build websites, but we do other stuff that ends up driving traffic to that. If you're all in on just the website, there's no budget left over to do any of the additional stuff as well. So if there's any tip I can give is if somebody's trying to go all in, try to avoid that as much as possible, because it's just going to be a nightmare over the long term. You're never going to meet that expectation.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where you want to under promise and over deliver too, and you don't have the ability to
absolutely,
at that point.
Yep. You'll never deliver enough for them to get their money back unless it's just an immediate super win and they get crazy traffic and they're selling products or services. Like I've never been in a situation where it's been all in and it's been healthy. I prefer to live within the budget, know that there's more so that we can continue the conversation and continue to work together over a long period of time. But as far as like identifying the price and identifying the customer, making sure that my default rate fits within that, it's very much about doing the homework of who's that target customer, what does their world look like, what does their budget look like typically. You know, if you consider an organization having like 10% of their revenue as a marketing budget, you know, if you can figure out even roughly what that revenue is for the year, I like to do often by staff, you know, think about how many people are on staff, multiply that by like 40 or 50,000 per person. Then you get a somewhat of an idea of what they're spending on just staff. There's just to be some extra money. So just some little math in there can help you go a long way with identifying the right person or the right company and organization to fit within whatever your costs are to do the website. Is that helpful? Did I answer the question correctly?
No, that's super helpful. And it's kind of one of those things where, you know, you walk into a meeting and you'd feel intimidated to try to just pull out of thin air some kind of idea of what their revenue is. But there are some ways you can do some, you know, general quick math and get some kind of idea. So, you know, if you're talking about, is this a $500,000 a year company or a $10 million a year company? You know, you should be able to at least narrow that down a little bit. And that's going to give you a better idea of what they're going to be willing to spend on their budget. And another thing that when you're talking about them not maxing out is, you know, I think Lee Jackson talks about this quite a bit, is, you know, kind of leaving some room in there for a contingency, because, you know, you can lay out all these plans for somebody and have the best proposal with all the details. And that doesn't mean the customer is going to understand the project. You know, so you're going to get somewhere down the line and they're going to say, oh, I thought the website was going to do such and such. He's like, well, we didn't quite quote for doing that. You know, we obviously can, and we'd love to help you out, but leaving some room in there for contingency too is important.
So you had mentioned,
no doubt.
You had mentioned taking into consideration, like, you know, wins and that type of thing. When you're quoting, do you take a look at what whatever product or service it is that they're offering, and what, like, per client or like per customer that would onboard?
Yeah, so you're talking kind of almost a value-based pricing type of agreement when you're looking at it. I certainly try to, but I've struggled with the value-based pricing thing from that standpoint, from saying, all right, I know that if I get you 2 customers, you're going to make X amount, which will cover whatever. I think that's certainly a cool way to go about it, and it works for some people, but I think that for our team, we base it more around what is our cost going to be to get the site done? What is the budget that's available from this organization, and can we make a decent amount of profit within that to keep everything flowing? That's more of my approach. But I do talk to people about that, especially the larger organizations that we're getting into, where I know that the budgets are getting a little bit bigger. Having an idea of what that win means for them will definitely dictate, you know, how much more I could charge. But it's not something that I do often right now.
Okay. One of the onboarding
that being said, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, one of the onboarding questions that I ask frequently is, you know, what a client or customer is worth to them monetarily, which gives me a good starting point, and then I go on to the other things as well. But, you know, it's a good, like, balance between the two.
Yeah. Well, I think even just having that conversation with them, a lot of times people don't know. They don't even have an idea what it costs to get a customer, or, you know, that customer is going to give them over the long term. So even having that conversation with them gives you kind of a positioning factor of, hey, I didn't even think about that. You're the person that's talking to me about that. Maybe I should talk to you about more stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's that type of customer. There's also the kind of client that they're really, like, you know, finicky when it comes to talking about that too. Like a lot of or not a lot, but a few of the clients that I've met with in the past, they didn't want to really say that. Not during the first few meetings, at least. People tend to hold anything that has to do with money pretty close to their chest. But I think that the more honest they are, and the more upfront they are with all of the information, the better you can quote them, and the better job you can do.
Yeah, no doubt. The better you're gonna be able to help them. And like I said earlier about transparency, like if you can get it going both ways, that's gonna be the best relationship. Obviously, sometimes you got to sign an NDA, and the larger the corporation gets, the more muddy some of that stuff gets. But, you know, tell me the number. What's great about working with the nonprofits is a lot of that information is public already. So they're not scared to talk about it. They're like, here's what the budget is. Here's what the numbers are. Can you help? Versus maybe a private company that doesn't want to talk about it as much. But if somebody's trying to withhold any information, that's kind of a checkbox in the no section for me.
Right.
I prefer to work with people that are going to have a dialogue and really want to talk about it. And, we're always willing to talk to somebody, give them information for free. I don't want to do legwork for you for free, but if you just want to sit and consult, I'll tell you what I think about a certain thing, but I need your feedback to be able to give you a good answer.
Yeah, and that kind of like plays right into to trust, like that going both ways communication. Like you need to trust them, but they need to trust you almost more importantly, and building that trust is it's paramount.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you're trying to get some realistic idea of the real budget from a client, what are some of the kind of action points you could give people to try to figure that out, besides the you gave the example of figuring out how many employees and stuff like that. You have any other tips on that?
I'm a huge believer in the we call it the website worksheet. I've changed it to project assessment worksheet, but essentially getting somebody to go through some steps to give you more information. Part of that information being a simple drop down, like here's the range of where's your budget at. A lot of times people will fluff it and say under whatever the cheapest prices you have, and they may have plenty of it and they just want to get on the phone. But that typically that gives me good information. And then as much as I've hated them in the past, I'm trying to reframe my idea of an RFP because I'll go on a quick rant about RFPs.
Yeah.
RFPs are typically written by people that have no idea what is actually best practice. It's a huge wish list. The budget's usually too small because they don't even know what it costs, and it's put together by teams of people that are all doing stuff. So they're usually crap. That being said, like I said, I'm trying to reframe my view of those because when I would receive them before, I'd get angry. That's never a good way to start a relationship. So now I'm like, okay, I accept the challenge. Is what you're asking for realistic? Does it fit within this budget? And like, is there any other questions that I have? Is there a way for me to start having a conversation with you to tell you that some of this stuff may not be the right way to go about it, and then starts to do some more positioning for you, which is cool. But the RFPs almost always have a budget. Before I'll get on the phone to really start diving into a project conversation with somebody, they've got to go through our worksheet. And if they don't go through the worksheet, that first call is me taking them through that worksheet. And I just ask the budget question. And I usually save it for the end. Let's talk through a whole thing. Give me that 15, 20 minutes of your time. Let me show you that I do know what I'm talking about and I'm asking the right questions so that at the end of it, I can say, what's your deadline for this and what's your budget for this? And then just be quiet and wait. Silence is the golden rule there because when I started doing it, I would be like, flubbing numbers out there, but now just sit and wait. They usually have an idea already in their head. If I've proven to them that I'm at least not an idiot and I'm asking the right questions, typically they're pretty honest about what it is. And at that point, another thing that I like to use too is let me know the realistic budget, because even if we're not the right company, I can direct you to somebody that might fit within, that I already trust and know is going to do a good job. And I do that a lot. So that question alone probably gets me some of that. And usually those people that don't want to give up the budget, they have a very low budget and they're just nervous that you're going to tell them it's like $75,000 to work on the website and they've got, less than, I don't know, they got $7,500 or something.
Right. But on the flip side
totally
of that too,
appropriate, but
on the flip side of that too, allowing them to better understand, not the impossibility, but the low likelihood that a lower budget is going to gain them what they want. It allows them to look at the other proposals that are coming in, and if somebody's like, oh yeah, no, we can totally do that for this tiny amount, it makes them like second guess those people for saying that they can do it, which, even if they don't end up going with you, at least, they may not go with somebody that's over promising and bound to under deliver.
Yeah, I don't ever want to be, if somebody's getting multiple proposals, I don't want to be the cheapest one for sure.
No.
Mm-mm.
I did get a question here from Chris Castillo in the live stream here, and I'm going to try
Hey Chris, what's up?
Yeah, I'm going to try to read it out here, but you know how it is when you got to like read in front of people. I'll sound like a kindergartner. But he said,
okay.
What are some of the conversation points you have with a prospect to determine what price range your proposal will be in? Number of pages is one thing I've seen, but my concern is that sometimes the client has redundant pages on their website, structure is poor, and pages may need to be consolidated. How do you address that before putting forward a proposal?
So our proposal, so the first thing I'm going to do when I go to a website is kind of look at what either the navigation, or if I can find a sitemap, what that sitemap looks like. Because, and this is something I learned from 48 and 48. One of the roles I have there, at least was doing there, was vetting the nonprofits that were applying. And so there's a certain level of site that is actually appropriate for a 48-hour build. Something that has 300 blog posts, even if you can import those blog posts, probably not a good look. If it's got 200 pages, probably not a good look. So I've gotten good at kind of diving into and finding out what a full site looks like. Our team is pretty good. If we can do something at like 50 pages, it's going to fit within our world, because likely we can cut some of that stuff down. But the page count conversation isn't always a huge deal. I'm more looking at what's custom about the project, what's different than what I would assume. And I would assume page content needs to be updated and overhauled. The way that we're approaching proposals now too is a little bit different, to where I'm giving a proposal that has a full scope price. It says, here's what I believe from all this conversation that we had is what the total cost of the project's going to be. But the first thing we're going to do is the discovery. And the discovery is going to include these things. And at the end of that discovery, we're going to put together a statement of work that then is a much more clear vision of that scope and what that cost is going to be. So if there's anything we didn't uncover during our first conversations, we're going to uncover it then. One of those roles is what we call a content coach, and their entire responsibility is to outline and get approval for the sitemap. Every page, every post, not necessarily listing every post, but if there's we just need to know there's 300 posts that need to be migrated or whatever. And then also they're working on page content for those things too. But during that discovery is where we really start to identify what the scope of the full content piece of the website is. But for the most part, that's usually pretty much the same. And we have caveat in the proposal that says up to X amount of pages. If we've realized before then that there's more, we change that number and change the price or whatever. So that's kind of how I handle that. I don't know if that's a really helpful answer for that specific question, but that's the probing of the website happens probably before I even get on the phone with somebody, after they've filled out the project assessment sheet.
No, I think that's a good answer. And I do see some people that charge per page. I had a competitor where I was before. She wasn't much of a competitor, but she was a competitor nonetheless. But everything she priced was per page, So it's just a weird dynamic to say, okay, well, now I want to make the most pages possible because that's how I make the most money. And now you want the least amount of pages possible because then you can pay the least amount for the website. But really, neither one of us are trying to make the right website. You know what I mean? So your incentives aren't aligned with the goal of the website. So that's where the disconnect is in my brain with counting the pages and saying, okay, this is exactly how many we're going to do for this price.
Yeah, and each website page is going to have a completely different value. If you were to do it that way, you can't really have a standard price for a page. An about page is worth, depending on the company, a lot less than a landing page or anything else,
or even a thank you page that you're just tracking information from a submission form or something. You're not going to charge that the same as the home page, so that's kind of hard. Do you do or any of the discovery sessions you do with your clients, do they pay for those, or are those all free? Okay.
No, they pay up front. So a proposal goes out, and it's basically, and we've recently changed the terms of our proposal, because we were doing the 50% upfront total project scope for a while. While that is great, it is a lot more work up front before the proposal goes out to make sure everything is buttoned up and perfect. So to get them out faster, what we've done is change the terms to where it's 100% payment for the discovery project. And that's the upfront cost. That's the engagement cost. And the deliverable, again, is that statement of work. Our hope is that we've done such a good job of this statement of work and any functionality documentation that they could take it elsewhere when they're done, if they don't want to work with us anymore. Or really our hope is that they would want to continue working with us, but we've got a clear vision. But yeah, it's 100% upfront for that. then the terms change based on the customer, but that's how we engage with that first part. And usually I try to do my diligence to be as accurate as possible before I even send the original proposal, but that's our catch-all, so that if I've missed something or they didn't give us some information or something changes in between the time we've talked and when we start the project, that discovery process gives us that opportunity. And in there, that's when the content coach comes in and does all the sitemap and the page content. Search engine optimization audit is happening. We're going through all that stuff. There's an onboarding process. So we're trying to cover the cost of starting that engagement and then getting through that discovery with them. It's also a little bit cheaper than that 50% upfront total project scope. So it's a little less risk for the company to engage.
So you're actually sending some sort of estimated cost or range of cost that they're having to at least somewhat agree to before you're going into all that work and doing the discovery and all that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The goal is that I've done such a good job on my own that the end of the discovery, the statement of work still says the same thing price-wise. But you know, there can always be something that pops up or a new need that happens because, you know, again, with the RFP situation, people are putting this stuff together and they really don't know what they need. They know what they want. They might not know how to get it or what's the best approach. So during that discovery piece, we're working on strategy. We're doing consulting. So they're getting some feedback, which may change their approach to something where they may have wanted something before. They don't want it anymore because they realize there's a better way to go about that. And that may be cheaper. It may be more expensive, but we don't know till we get through it. But it gives us the opportunity to really start engaging. We're paid 100% for our time, so we're not losing money on the discovery. And we get an opportunity to just like smother them with expertise for a couple of weeks so that they're really just like, holy crap, I have to keep working with this company because like they're really taking this thing to the next level.
Yeah.
So I imagine your retention rate is probably pretty good on that then, huh?
Yeah, we haven't had anybody leave. Well, we had one person we had to fire during a discovery project because they just kind of went off their rocker. But for the most part, if we finish the discovery, we're moving into the project after that. And by person, I mean client, not employee. We don't really fire a lot of employees.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do, right? They might be listening.
Some people are just.
They might be listening.
That's okay.
So you need to be a hard ass on this. You know, we'll fire you right now. If you're wasting time watching this on Facebook, then it's over. Yeah.
No, there's an unwritten rule of thumb within our organization that if a client disrespects anybody on our team at any time for any reason, it's pretty much you're done. It's a one strike thing. There's not a second chance. It's like, we're professional. We're here to help you do your thing. We want to win. So like, if you're being a jerk or you can't handle a conversation as an adult, like we don't want to work with you. And we're fortunate now to finally be in a position where we can like do that. There was a period of time where we had to deal with some people that were really terrible. But like, you know, I've had people on our team, they've been in tears. They've had nightmares. They've been like scared to talk to a client because of just how awful those people are. And like, that's no way to do business. So we're thankful we don't have to do that anymore. But I know it's kind of going off the rails there, but I think it's an important thing to note.
No, I think so.
Fire your clients if they're crappy.
Yeah, I think so
save
too.
You money.
But what you said in there is perfect too. And I've had conversations. You know, we have some people they're in this community that we chat with that are just starting out, and then some people that have been doing this, 20 years. And one of the benefits you get once you get to a point in your business where you're stable and you have reliable income and stuff like that is you can start to be more picky like that. So you can start saying we have a one strike rule, but honestly, when you first start out, you kind of just got to take it from customers too often, to make money, which is difficult to do. But there's light at the end of that tunnel, once you can get going. It's
good
fun
learning experience.
It's fun when you get to start demanding a little bit out of your clients, or expecting a little bit more out of them.
Yeah, I would say it's an expectation. It's much. I expect you to be a professional adult when we're working together. We're both on this project together. We both want the same thing. So like, don't yell at me. Don't swear at me. Don't demand things from me. Like when I was at a WordCamp in Tampa, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he said in his contract, and this is a little bit less intense, but one of his contracts says, if you send me an email in all caps, you're fired. That's it, hands down. I will not respond to you. The contract is void. You're out. Do not do that.
I want to add something to that. If you send me the entire message in the subject line, then I'm
right.
Like
Right. You need too much hand holding. I won't be able to work with you.
No doubt. Well, kind of speaking on that, Matt Davies, who's in our Facebook Live here, and he likes to stir stuff up. So he asked, what's the biggest disaster you've had with a proposal? Do you have any juicy stories?
Disaster with a proposal. I mean, other than like early on, just not charging enough and having to spend 6 months on something that I just wasn't making money on and I was paying people to work on. Like those are things. We did have one time. This isn't really a proposal thing, but the only time I ever shut down somebody's site without actually telling them multiple times beforehand, they were about to present it to their like board or whatever, and I was finally going to get my check that I've been waiting on, but the site was down when they're presenting it to the board. And dude immediately calls me. He's like, I'm outside the boardroom. Put the site back up right now. You guys are fired. All this stuff. That was a pretty big disaster. But that was early. So, and this may be a good talking point is terms, net terms. So I didn't read the contract that we had signed because, you know, my best case is I send you a proposal, I send you our professional services agreement, and you're going to work under our terms and conditions. As we're getting into these larger organizations, sometimes they're like, no. You're going to work under our terms and conditions, so you need to sign this document, which is totally cool as long as you read those terms. So this was one of my first ones, and I was like, this is so great. I sent them an invoice. I'm ready to go. My invoice says net 0, but the document I signed said like net 45 or something like that. So, and I was early in my business, hungry for getting that paycheck so I could pay my rent. So I was like, what do I do? They haven't paid me. I'll turn their site off. It was terrible. But reading those terms and making sure that stuff is super clear, making sure that you know when your cash flow is going to be happening is that's a must. You have to do that just so that you know when you're going to get paid and know when you can start bugging people. We don't really have to chase a ton of money at this point because our terms are usually, the expectation is set correctly because we know whether or not it's ours or their terms that we got to go by. The only one that I do for sure is our first payment to engage, that 100% discovery, is always net 0. You need to pay that before we even do a kickoff call with you. But beyond that, it's usually like net 15 unless they change it and need net 30. We rarely go 45, but the bigger organizations do that, and you just got to be prepared for that if that's something that's going to happen. But they're usually, once you're in their system, though, it's like you're going to get paid. You just got to wait.
Right. Somebody asked, Chris asked another question on here that kind of ties into that. He said, is your, like the paid discovery prices, are those like a fixed charge for each client, or is it different depending on the client? And if it is, how do you determine that?
It continues to go up every project because we're spending more and more time in these things, but it's pretty much a fixed rate. You know, I've got a good idea of what it's going to take to do a discovery for specific projects. I try to base it on the total project cost. So we're looking at like 20% total project cost usually is what I'm going to go by. So if the total project cost is, 10 grand, it's going to be a much lower than if the total project cost is 30 grand or 40 grand or whatever. So I just want to make sure that I give our team the financial resources they need to do their best work in that discovery that ultimately might bring down the total project cost because we've done our diligence during that thing. And that's something I like to tell the client too, is like, by doing this discovery, we might end up with a cheaper project. I don't have enough information right now from you to know whether or not this is a big deal or if it's a small deal. A lot of times it's a small deal. Somebody might want, I don't know, what's a good example? They just may need something that, verbally sounds like it could be a lot of custom work, but then turns out that there's a Beaver Builder module for it, and it's literally you just drag and drop it in there. We need some type of map thing. Okay, do you need like an embedded code, or do you need me to actually write some code? There's a big difference in the price there.
Sure, and that's you're doing a good job of like leading me right into.
Yeah,
these
I was going to say, Darren.
Yeah. So
I did my homework.
Yeah, good job. He said, I've never asked for a payment in a discovery call. Can you talk a little bit about what you cover in a discovery call that makes the client want to pay for it? So I know you touched on it a little bit, but it does take a little bit of balls that first time to be like, I'm not going to really produce something, you're not going to walk away with a website, but you're going to pay me for all this research time.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Well, so I think there's two different, when I say website discovery, it can mean a couple different things. So one thing that it could mean is you're going to pay me for my time to come and like show up to your office and talk you through this stuff that you don't understand yet. That's going to be a cost per half day or full day. Another website discovery might be somebody else built your website. You want me to host it and maintain it for you. I don't want to do that until I've seen what it looks like. So that's a website discovery. And we've got a 23-point checklist that we go through. And there's like some certain things. It covers our onboarding cost. It covers some, months of the hosting cost or whatever like that. So that's another website discovery. But the actual project discovery, so it's our discovery and strategy session, it's the full project scope. So to get even to that point, it's like somebody's like, hey, how much does a website cost? I'm like, I have no idea. Tell me more. The best way to do that would be to fill out this project assessment form, ask you a couple questions about, your audience and your goals and what you're trying to do so that we're clear. Second thing we're going to do is have like a 15 to 20-minute conversation. So as soon as they've finished that project assessment sheet, an email goes out and says, here's my Calendly link. Book a time that's convenient for you directly on my calendar. We're going to talk. So up until then, they've paid nothing, including through that conversation. But by that time, I've got the project assessment sheet done. I've got my own kind of follow-up questions that I've done with them on the phone to get more clarity, which gives me almost enough information to like send a really accurate proposal. Hopefully by that point, I've shown them the expertise and done some level of consulting that makes them want to engage with us. And the proposal says, here's the terms. Here's the full project. We're going to do discovery and strategy. We're going to do design and build. We're going to do QA and launch. We're going to do ongoing support. Here's what's included in all those things. The only thing you pay for right now is this discovery. And as long as you told me everything and everybody's cool and still on the same page, this project scope and price is probably going to stay the same, and you can continue to engage or not. But the part where somebody's like, I don't know what I want. Can you come, can you talk to me and consult about it? That's just a rate. You need to figure out whatever your rate is. If it's an hourly thing, make sure if it's a 4-hour half-day rate, you're including your time to and from their office. If it's outside of a certain place, it's some travel fee or whatever it is, and just decide on what that is. If it can be hourly, it can be value. It really just depends. Make sure that the deliverable is clear so they know what they're going to receive at the end of that. I have to do those less and less now, but it is something that we've done in the past. And as long as the organization, if it's a solo person, like a solopreneur or a very, very small business, they're probably not going to, they may value it, but they're financially not going to value it as much as a larger organization who really knows, like, we need this help. Your price point is low enough that you can come in and or even it's accurate to what we expected so that you can come in and kind of help us map this out. I do enjoy those sessions, though I do hate going on site sometimes because it's just a pain. In the nature of the world we work, this is great. Sure. I could do this all day long. But my success rate going on site to talk about somebody's project to get them to try to sign up for something is 0. Every time I've done it, it's been the wrong type of customer for me. The type of customer that's good for me is somebody that is digitally capable. They can handle talking on a phone or through a video chat. They understand email. They understand project management software, and they can work in this world. The wrong client for me is somebody that's like, I need you to come on site to talk to our board of directors and present this thing and talk through it. I'll do it, but I don't think that person is that company is a good company for our company. It's for somebody else that's their model. That's how they work.
So yeah,
I don't know if that's helpful either.
No, that's super helpful. I've run into that problem with figuring out it's the wrong customer too late when they want to send me revisions to what I've designed, and they'll print it all out for me, print the whole website out and scribble.
Oh yeah.
I should have done things multiple times.
So Chris asked,
yeah, no doubt.
Another question about the discoveries. He says, so do you price a $10,000, for example, $10,000 project with a $2,000 discovery, and that's part of the 10,000, so $8K remainder of the project, or is it a total of 12 after that? No,
it would be 8 for the remainder. Okay. And that's kind of how it's priced out. There is a line item that says discovery and strategy is this much. And design is this much, and it's going to be X amount of views, which is essentially the page template. We're using page builders a lot. So a view to me is like the home page, any custom landing page, anything that's outside of the ordinary content page. Development is going to be this much. Project management is going to be this much, and then ongoing support is going to be this much. So it's all spelled out for them up front. And then that discovery cost should already be built in. The challenge is making sure that you get enough information during that to either adjust the cost up or down. I try not to go down, but we do go up.
And one thing I know we're getting pretty close to running up on time here, even though I could probably keep doing this conversation for about 3 more hours. So we'll have to get you on for part 2. But one thing I know we did want to talk about was, and we have a global audience in here. So this can be kind of US specific because that's where we are, but taxes. So I think that was one thing that like blew my mind when I started doing this on my own, like how much you really need to be saving for taxes. The tax man does come, and you have to write a giant check at the end of the year. And that the first one I wrote, I think it was, like $13,000 or something to the IRS. And my hand was shaking.
Your heart
$13,000 check. Yeah.
Like
you're not paying anybody else that much.
Yeah.
That's a whole longer conversation about where that goes and how they're using it and everything. But the easiest rule of thumb I have, so I've completely removed myself from accounting because I hate that part so much. I don't mind the math and the numbers up front, but like the admin stuff is not the best place for me to live. It's frustrating for me. So I'm so thankful that our team does that without me being involved, and they do an amazing job. So from like the bigger organizational standpoint, the tax thing can be super complicated between salary people, depending on where they're living. Like if you've got salary people outside of your state or whatever, there's some different tax issues. Contractors, they're supposed to be responsible for their own stuff. There's business and employee taxes. It's a whole big mess. But as like a new person, if you're a solopreneur, the best and easiest math is to do 33, 33, 34. So, and you can figure them out however you want, but essentially one of those buckets goes to your taxes, put it away into an account by itself that just lives there. Don't touch it. The other one goes to your business because you're going to have business costs, and whether that's paying for a co-working space or, paying for lunch for somebody or any of the tools you use, you need to have that money. And then the rest of it goes to you as a person. So as you get employees and as you start growing that, you've got to figure out how those numbers change a little bit. But as like a solopreneur, that's the easiest way to break that stuff up. And then what you find though is if you don't tap into them, by the end of the year, you've got these 2 big buckets of money sitting there that you're like, holy crap, I didn't really, and if you've done a good job, paying yourself, you're just sitting on this, and you can invest it or you can do whatever you need to do with it, but it's there. But you got to pay the tax man. He's going to find you. If you're doing business in the US, they're going to track you down, and they're going to wait until probably you owe them more than you want to pay to start coming after you. So you got to be proactive. And I do think it's really good to pay quarterly if you can do it. The opportunity is there. That's what they would prefer. You may end up getting some money back, but like just to take care of that thing it's going to make your life so much easier in the long run.
Yeah, that's what I started doing. This year was the first year I paid like the estimated quarterly taxes every quarter. So I could, it's a little bit of a guess game, but I basically did what you're saying, and I had a certain amount I was saving. I've basically paid everything to them, and looking at the numbers now, I think I'm actually going to end up with a little bit of money back. So I don't really like to loan the government any money, but I'm not gonna let them keep it.
I'd like to add,
so just to kind of, no, you go ahead first.
I was going to say, like, real brief, I'd like to add that that paying yourself is a pretty good idea, too. I pay myself monthly. It's always the same amount. It's typically under what I've made that month by a long shot. I live very meagerly. But that's by design. That's how I like things. But if you do that and you do hit those months that are a little bit more dry, then if you've done it correctly and you've figured out what your monthly expenses are, then there's a lot less chance that you're going to hit a moment of, oh shit, I need money, because that constant flow, when it does start to slow, you can still pay yourself from that reserve. That's something that's helped me tremendously through my business.
Yeah, and keeping that list of those monthly expenses is really important too. Whether it's a spreadsheet or you're doing it in QuickBooks or whatever, actually knowing that cost, and not just because the random tools come out at different times whenever you started paying for them, not paying for it all at the same time, and that stuff can add up. We did a full review of our expenses this year, and I was like, what are these tools? We're not even using half of this stuff. But I want to talk about just as an example for the math piece so that people can really start to understand why you need to charge more for your website. Let's say you do the $500 website, and let's say you follow the three bucket rule. I mean, you're looking at, if it's taken you a month to do that project, you've only made $500. So 33% of that's going to taxes. So now you're down to what, like $350 or something like that. Then yeah, $335. All right. And so then in the next chunk of that goes out to your business. And so you're going to end up with like $125 or something, or $130 that you pay yourself after that $500 project. So like, that's not a lot of money. I mean, that's gas for me for like a month. Yeah, so right. You bump that up to 1,000 or bump that up to 2,000. As you're setting your price points, think about how much you got to pay the taxman, how much you got to pay your business and yourself, so that you're still going to have enough to live off of. So like, if you need $2,000 every month to pay your bills and your rent and go out and have some savings, you probably need to be doing a $10,000 website if you're doing it by yourself.
Sure.
Yeah, that $2,000
yeah, do the math.
website,
the math is always helpful.
You need a couple of those for the month.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yep.
Well,
and it's the same amount of work, same amount of legwork to do the site.
Yeah, I actually find some of the really lower budget clients are actually a whole lot more work.
For sure. Oh yeah.
They don't completely always understand what goes into it. So, like I said, we're hitting our mark here. We got lots of good responses on here. I know you're part of our group now, so if you get some time later,
for sure.
I didn't get to all the questions in here, so if you can, I'll get to one more. Where did you get your hoodie,
Matt?
This is a Sideways8 Especial.
Nice.
So yeah, I'll be happy to send you. We've still got some of these left. If you shoot me your address afterwards and your size, I'll dig one up for you. But yeah, so we print just a fun saying, and then our little Einstein guy. Actually, it's not Einstein. It's just somebody that looks very, very similar.
Right.
We try to have fun with our swag and just we've got a couple different shirts and sayings and all that. And none of it's really for sale because we can't do that. But I'm happy to send one to anybody that wants to send me their address.
Well, you're getting a tons of thumbs up on that, so you better better have not wrote a check you can't cash on that one, huh? All right.
No, I got it. Well, I'm happy to send them out.
Awesome. Well, man, I certainly appreciate you jumping on. I know we're going to have you back on and follow up on some of this, because there was probably 4 or 5 questions I didn't even get to. So we'll just do it again.
Sounds great.
Do it again in 2019. I do want to do a little bit of housekeeping before we cut this stream off. So we have a few different ways this thing goes out. So if you are watching us right now on Facebook, we also do this as a podcast. We just cut the audio from this, put it out as a podcast, so you can take us on the go. If you just go to theadminbar.com/podcast, you can get to that. If you're watching this at a later date on YouTube or on our website, you can join in on this live on Facebook and ask questions and get free hoodies. So you missed out this time, but better luck next time. And also today, I just started an Instagram account for us. Look at how we're keeping up with the times.
Man, all over it.
We're so cool now. I don't want to repurpose our exact content on Instagram because it seems boring. So I think we're going to do a little bit of behind the scenes at the admin bar. So before this, we did a little live video of me and Matt prepping for the show. So if you want to go follow us on Instagram, we will follow you back so we can grow that number a little bit. And next week, we are having Dan Maybe from WP and Up come talk to us about that initiative. And it's something that's really cool. And I think it's going to be an interesting talk. So, Bret, is there anything else we can promote for you or you want to talk about before you get off of here? I certainly want to pay you back for all the time you've given up for us today.
Anybody going to WordCamp US? You can hang out there.
There you go. That's awesome.
That's it. Yeah, come find me. I'll probably be wearing this same exact hoodie. So, and this is my look. So.
Yeah, I recognize you for sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
No, I really appreciate you guys having me on. I think this is great. Keep doing good work. Keep getting good conversations going. It's really helpful.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it. Matt, you got anything else to add before we get out of here?
No, I think you covered just about everything. I do want to say that Tammy O'Neill did comment saying that this episode in particular was like therapy. So awesome.
Yeah, sometimes
that's like half my job. Yeah, no doubt.
Well, we're all here for each other, so I'm glad you joined in for this session. Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, we'll catch you on the other side. We'll try to get to any questions that we didn't get to here. We'll try to answer them in the group, and this will be up on YouTube and podcast and all those other places shortly. So if you missed part of it, come back and check it out, and we will talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.